Hi everyone. A very warm welcome for all of you sitting here tuning in for Grow Impact Days. We are really happy that all of you chose to tune in for the session today. As you may have noticed for the program, it's not only today. We have 3 days for you. Today we are focusing on startups, tomorrow on investors, and on day 3, Thursday, we are focused on collaboration together with corporates and public institutions. As you can see from the program on the screen here, today's program consists of a fireside chat, a keynote, and a panel discussion. I do hope that you will enjoy all the session, and I do hope that I will see you tomorrow again for the session together with the investors. And now I'll give the word to you, Lasse.
Thank you very much, Linda. And also a big thank you to the partners of the Grow Impact Days. I really want to thank Incuba, the City of Aarhus, Aarhus University, Aarhus Investor Summit, Erhvervsstyrelsen, Danske Bank, and Innovationsfonden. Without you guys, none of this would have happened. Now, there's also a little bit of a sour part in this, because we would have loved to welcome everyone at the City Hall, which was originally the plan of this event. But sadly, because of the COVID situation, we're not able to invite you guys in for the session. But that actually has some good aspect to it as well. It actually allows me to do this, which will now bring all the attention to me. What a nice feature. As you may have seen, this event is divided into 3 different days. Today, we're going to see everything from the startup's perspective. Tomorrow, we'll dive in and understand the ecosystem from the investor perspective. And on Thursday, we'll try to bring it all together and invite the corporates and the public industry to understand how the entire ecosystem around bringing impact innovation to life actually looks. Now I'm very happy to hand it over to Member of Parliament, Tommy Ahlers. Please take it away, Tommy.
Kære alle sammen, tak fordi at jeg må tale til jer her de næste 5 minutters tid. Det er jo som alt andet er lige i øjeblikket, desværre virtuelt. Jeg vil gerne have stået i Aarhus hos jer i stedet for. Grow Impact, det er jo en fantastisk konference, fordi den tager fat det helt rigtige sted. Den tager fat i, hvad bør man gøre, hvis man nu siger, jeg vil gerne knokle som iværksætter. Jeg vil gerne gøre det, en iværksætter gør, som tit virker som om man vil spise en lille smule glas hver eneste dag, fordi det er hårdt og uforudsigeligt og sådan ting. Hvor skal jeg bruge den energi henne? Og der er det virkelig stærkt, hvis vi kan få flere og flere iværksættere drejet over mod den grønne omstilling og mod klimakampen. Fordi klimakampen er en af de største kriser, vi står med. Jeg ved godt, vi står midt i en sundhedskrise, en nedlukning, og kender ikke helt konsekvenserne af det i forhold til den økonomiske påvirkning og en økonomisk krise. Men uanset hvad, så står vi med en klimakrise. Der er nogen, der har sagt det rigtig, rigtig lang tid, og deres forudsigelser, for eksempel tilbage fra 10 år siden, om hvordan verden ville se ud i 2020, hvis vi ikke gjorde noget, det har jo svært blevet sådan. Vi sagde dengang, det kommer ikke til at passe. De der skovbrænde kommer ikke helt tæt ind til byerne. Vi kommer ikke til at opleve så store temperaturstigninger. Vi kommer ikke til at se tørke på samme måde. Men det gør vi. Sådan er det. Så det er ikke noget, vi bare kan sige, det går nok væk. Det gør det ikke. Vi skal handle, og vi skal handle nu. Der var det også fantastisk, at vi har det her meget ambitiøse klimamål i Danmark. For det gør os til et foregangsland. Og det er der, vi virkelig kan påvirke hele verden. Det er, hvis vi er et foregangsland. Hvis vi er dem, der siger, det viser hele verden, at det godt kan lade sig gøre. Og have et meget, meget ambitiøst klimamål, og samtidig har et land, der er rigt, et land, der er i vækst, økonomisk vækst, et land, der stadigvæk har masser af frihed, et land, der har fået befolkningen med i klimakampen. Det er det, vi skal opfylde. Fordi så bliver vi det foregangsland, hvor en minister i Frankrig bruger som eksempel at sige, se, det kan godt lade sig gøre, uden gule veste på gaden. Hvor et oppositionspolitiker i Australien siger, hvorfor gør vi ikke mere, det kan godt lade sig gøre, se på Danmark. Det er, hvis vi kan blive det foregangsland, at det batter noget, vi gør i Danmark. For ellers batter det ikke noget. Ellers er vi for lille en del af det globale udslip. Men foregangslands tankegangen er den helt rigtige at slå ind på. Jeg var glad for, at vi har det her ambitiøse klimamål. Det skal være lidt polemisk, har vi en regering, der måske ikke helt lever op til ambitionerne der, og vi hele tiden skal trække dem til truet, heldigvis sammen med andre, også partier, der også er ansvarlige og ambitiøse på det grønne område. Men vi skal nok komme derhen. Og når vi så kommer derhen, så det at være et foregangsland, der går først, det skaber jo også en erhvervsmulighed i Danmark. Fordi hvis vi er det land, der får indført en CO2-afgift, en ensartet CO2-afgift, Vi er et land, der stiller krav til byggerier. Hvis vi er et land, der når hurtigst og længst med udbygning af ladeinfrastruktur, så skaber det en masse forretningsmuligheder for de virksomheder, der så leverer til det hjemmemarked her. Og det vil gøre, at innovation bliver skabt her i Danmark. Der opstår nye startups, store eksisterende virksomheder ser den her. Og så kan de fange den her globale mulighed. For lad os bare være helt ærlige. Den grønne omstilling er en forretningsmulighed, der er større end internettet. For det er så fundamentale ting, der skal lave om i samfundet. I alle leder af samfundet. I produktionen, i transporten, i vores fødevareerhverv, i måden vi bruger affald på, måden hvad vi genbruger. Hele vejen rundt skal der ske en kæmpe omstilling, og den skal ske inden for forholdsvis kort tid, og derfor er der en massiv forretningsmulighed. Og den skal danske virksomheder gribe, og den kan danske virksomheder gribe, hvis vi holder fast i et højt ambitiøst mål, og bliver ved med at løbe forrest. Og på den måde hænger tingene sammen, at vi kan løse klimakrisen, på danskernes vegne, så vi reducerer vores aftryk, at vi kan bruge det som et foregangsland, som sådan, systemtankegang, kan pege på et land, hvor det kan lade sig gøre, og derfor begynder andre lande at kopiere os, og samtidig så får vi en økonomisk vækst ud af det, fordi vi får skabt en masse nye danske virksomheder, der virkelig spiller med, og går til forretningsmuligheden i det, og også eksisterende virksomheder, der gør det. Og til jer grønne iværksættere, der sidder og lytter med nu, tak fordi I gør det, fordi I er et lidt sværere sted, end hvis man bare lavede en tøjvirksomhed, eller som mig lavede en eller anden internetvirksomhed. Så kan man hurtigt komme i gang, man kan få det afklaret, der er et marked for det og sådan ting, få nogle investorer ind, så kan man måske være heldigere, og hvis det er det, man ønsker, at sælge virksomheden, eller bygge en stor virksomhed. Men på kort tid får man afklaret, at det her kan godt lade sig gøre. Den luksus er der mange af jer, der ikke har, fordi I bevæger jer i et område, hvor der både er en teknologisk, usikkerhed og risiko, og en kommerciel usikkerhed og risiko. Så først skal I finde ud af, kan det overhovedet lade sig gøre det, jeg sælger for, og så skal I finde ud af, om der er kunder til det. Og derfor står I et andet sted, og derfor skal I være mere tålmodige, derfor skal I løbe en større risiko, men I skal også tiltrække nogle investorer, der er parat til at løbe en større risiko. Og derfor er det lidt anderledes, når vi snakker grønne iværksættere, og det skal vi have fokus på, både når vi snakker universiteterne, når vi snakker kapital, og vi snakker, hvilket talent I har behov for. Så det håber jeg, at I råber op omkring, både til mig som politiker, men også ud i startup-miljøet i Danmark og i Europa, og siger, hvad er det, I har behov for det skal vi blive bedre til at forstå, så vi kan få mange flere af jer, og få jer bygget rigtig store, så I kan hjælpe med at redde planeten og skabe en masse nye arbejdspladser og vækst.
A big thank you to you, Tommy, for opening up our session today. Next one up is a fireside chat that I have been looking very much forward to. Lasse will be moderating it together with one of the most visionary entrepreneurs we have here in Aarhus. It's Thomas Brorsen Pedersen, who's the CEO of Pond.
Thomas, welcome and thank you for joining us. And thank you for showing us the beautiful view from your office. It looks absolutely incredible. Must be one of the most beautiful views of Aarhus. Thomas, you are the co-founder of Pond. And to start this off, I would really love you to give us a background on yourself and what Pond is all about.
Thank you very much, Lasse. Nice meeting you again. It's been a while. Let's start by sharing my presentation. Yes, Pond is a startup starting in Aarhus, simply. What we I need to do like that. Yes. What we developed in Pond is a substitute for conventional fossil-based, crude oil-based plastic. It's the new school version that is based on plant materials, and it's fully compostable, meaning that the recycling of our materials compared to fossil-based is done by nature in the end, meaning that nature crunch down our molecules and rebuild new organic material. The idea is founded in my basement at the left picture on my old stove, and together with one of my former colleagues from Siemens Wind Power, we started 8 years ago experimenting, just for fun, in my basement, trying to mix components that we believed could replace the conventional epoxy that we use for wind turbine blades and aerospace, automotive applications. And since then we have grown. We got awarded by NASA in 2015, being one of the 10 most promising new sustainable materials in the world. And that's actually where the company started up. We took off, got connected to a lot of big brands around the world. And this is where we moved into in Cuba at the harbor side of Aarhus. And it's been busy since then. Our innovation is a fully bio-based and fully biodegradable epoxy substitute in the beginning. But we further developed it, meaning that it's at the moment primarily thermoplastic properties that we deliver to customers. It's patented by 4 patents at the moment, pending though. Some of them are finalized, and it's the raw material for our compounds can be sourced from any kind of bio waste containing carbohydrates. Could be algae, and it could even be harvested from atmosphere. These are some of the applications that we can produce at the moment, and this is going to be a little technical. I'll just focus on the left side. Injection molding is a lot of the components that you know from your everyday business is injection molded, and fibers are well known to everyone too. But we are able to produce paints and insulation and components for even plant propagation and divers and airplanes, and it's a very broad range of applications. This is our current production site at the Baltikagade in Aarhus, the former shipyard. It's a pilot scale plant capable of producing up to 1,500 metric tons a year, and it's our future R&D plant, because very soon we will start building our new future production site at Østhavnsvej, nearby the ferry terminal of going to across Denmark. And this is our scale up. The first module at the site will be capable of producing up to 15,000 metric tons a year, and we're capable of. We have space enough at the harbor site to erect 16 of these modules. The more fun part is showing you some of the applications that we have currently out there. You're able to buy an iPhone cover from Pela at the Apple Store. We actually one of the only companies making fully bio-based components that are clear for vision. We're in the process of developing. This is a device for medical use. Big Danish company, insulin. This is actually a substitute for ABS. The same ABS that is used for Lego bricks, and it has very high performance. And actually, during these tests, we showed properties that are even 10% higher than the conventional ABS. Automotive. This is a side panel, interior part for a very big German car manufacturer. It's ready for serial production now, and we'll probably soon see some of these components in cars. This is a hanger. It will be in retail stores for textile, and it's actually made out of grass cut from a lawn. We make 3D printing thread. Baby equipment, able to turn rice husk, a waste stream from production of rice, into applications for furniture. This is a substitute for MDF board, and I'm very proud to show this. This is our first garment produced as a substitute for conventional polyester yarns, meaning it has the same properties as the conventional polyester, but this is fully bio-based and compostable, meaning that release of microalgae into the environment will be recognized as food for organisms. Yeah, that's a brief presentation of what we do at Pond.
Wow. A brief presentation of some of the small projects we have lying around. Very nice,
Yes.
Thomas. It's extremely interesting. So we call this a fireside chat, which means that you guys will have to deal with the fact that I'm here a little bit as well. And I'll talk to Thomas a little bit more about what he sees in the future of what they do at Pond, and some of the strengths and challenges that they've met in the process of building up Pond. So let's start very broad here and talk about with all the work that you do at Pond and some of the partners that you guys have. I assume you spend some of your time really thinking about what are the big jobs to be done out there. What are the main problems that we're facing planet Earth right now that we need fixing for ASAP?
Sure. The single biggest issue that we're facing at the moment is definitely the release of formerly fossil carbon in the form of gas. The last 100 years, we've been extracting gas, natural gas, charcoal, and lately especially crude oil from, you could say, the inside of our planet. Meaning that this solid matter was actually stored inside our planet, but during the burning of these components, we released the carbon into the atmosphere, and this is causing our climate change, and species are dying on a daily basis now. This is what we need to change. We need to capture this carbon again. It's now in the atmosphere as carbon dioxide, and we need to capture it again. And then, of course, we need to completely stop using fossil-based materials. And narrowing into what we do at Pond, we take part in the challenge where we need to have a substitute for the conventional plastic. 8% of all the crude oil that is extracted globally is turned into plastic. And end of use, we currently primarily burn it, and then it's released to the atmosphere. There's a huge narrative at the moment that we're going to recycle this fossil-based plastic, capture it from the oceans, and reshape it into new components. But technology is not ready for that yet. We simply can't change it into new components. To some extent, we can, but it's a huge problem. And this is where our product comes in, because we don't harvest our raw materials from the green layer on top of our planet. We don't harvest it from the inside of the planet. We harvest it from the green layer on top of the planet, meaning that we go into this cycle that's going on for millions of years, based by nature. And actually, our raw material is plants, meaning that they will capture the carbon dioxide, and then we turn it into solid matter and turn it into products later on by our customers. There's a huge problem also that we do not discuss yet. I told you that 8% of crude oil is used for plastic. The crude oil is actually fractionized, meaning that you take fraction from crude oil and turn it into plastic components, meaning that the polypropylene is made by propylene turned into long molecule chains. And as an example, the PET that we use for bottles and for polyester yarns is based on xylene. Xylene is a fraction of crude oil, but crude oil only contains roughly 0.3% xylene, meaning that to make 1 or 3 kg of polyester, you actually need to extract 1 metric ton of crude oil. And in a future, hopefully a near future, where we don't extract crude oil for energy use and transportation anymore, then we don't have those fractions anymore. Meaning that the narrative of recycling conventional fossil-based plastic will die simply.
It's one of the reasons that every time I hear about you guys and what you do, I'm reminded about the fact that this is not just something where we can develop yet another app to solve the problem. And I think that actually brings me on to my next question. When I met you first time some years ago, I listened to you and your partner back then talking about where this was going and the bold ambitions of this company. And so wow, this is huge. But I was also thinking, is it almost too huge for us to even be able to support a company like this being built? So I'd like to hear your reflections on with the bold vision that you guys had. What speed bumps have you met along the way in building up a company with a very long-term vision as you guys have with Pond?
Definitely, we back then we initially actually set quite a bold ambition. It's bigger than I now know a little more how big it is. We are up against conventional plastic industry. It's like being up against the tobacco industry. But luckily, during the period that we developed our products, the world has changed, definitely. 8 years ago, no one knew about microplastic. And during the last, I would say, 1 year, our companies and potential customers around us are nearly panicking because they have plastic products that they need to change now. And where are the solutions? And we're one of them, one of the very few of them. Being capable of producing products that are actually compatible with the conventional plastic. But it's a slow process to change the mindset of people. We came from the area, the time of tech industry where you had the hockey stick, the fast-growing hockey stick. It's a scalable industry, meaning that you can scale an app to very big within a very short time, but it can crash and burn within a very short time too. Meaning that the people that invest now are a lot of people that come from tech industry, and they're used to a very aggressive hockey stick, and we can't do that when we produce physical matter. We need to build plants. We need to. This is far slower, but in the end, this will be even more solid investment because you use matter every day. We need clothes. We need applications in our daily life, I hope the mindset soon will change for that, but that has definitely been a challenge to get funding enough.
One of the things it seems that you guys have been really good at from early on in the history of the company is partnering up with larger corporates, entering into competitions that they're. You mentioned the NASA program that also exposed you to some of the biggest corporates in the world. Can you share a little bit about your experience working with these big companies and how that's been helpful in building up Pond?
Sure. First of all, I feel very blessed that I get the chance to work with fantastic people around the world, experiencing what's going on in the forefront of the impact business. When I went to bed last night, I had quite a tough day with a lot of meetings. I started out in China with one of the biggest producers of textile yarns. Then we went to Norway for a toothbrush company, and South Africa windsurfing equipment, and ended up in US first on the East Coast with a huge producer furniture that we have a technology coming up that is very interesting. And then the last meeting was one of the biggest apparel companies on the West Coast looking into tests for shoes.
Oh.
I couldn't do that a year ago. I mean, it will take 14 days at least to usually we go visit these people, but I could do this in one day. This is actually an impact too that the corona has brought us, that we don't travel. I believe that the near future we will travel far less because people now know that it's convenient to have this meetings like this. Those are many of them are big companies that started up. We didn't really contact a lot of people. Only a handful, I would say, or companies. Most of them came to us, and those are big brands across the planet. Bigger brands are slower, I would say. They are more visionary. I had a meeting the other day with an apparel company that showed up with the algae expert, meaning that they have an algae expert internally in this company. It's amazing. I mean, these companies are really looking far into the future compared to what we know in our daily lives, and I feel blessed being part of this. But we realize that only focusing on the bigger companies will kill us, because it's a far development. They have very high standards, and I mean, developing new materials for automotive like this one, they told us it will take 8 years. We are only 4 years into this project, but and it's soon in the cars, so we will challenge that time frame. But it needs a lot of cash. We burn cash like $1 million a month, and it's tough. So we realized that we need to partner up with smaller companies too. And I have an example here. This is baby equipment with a small new startup from Aarhus, actually. We are products out there. You can buy them now. The project was only like 4 months, and now we're rocking. It's not big volume, but this is great. This is immediate impact, and this is a bowl for babies that is made out of barley and wood chips.
I guess that's a little bit a part of the strategy, to have this dual approach where you go and approach some of the big ones that, you know, it's a long-term collaboration and vision that you guys are pursuing together, but also get some immediate applications going with some of the smaller ones that can also, I guess, give you something to show everyone else where you can take it.
It's important to have the mix, definitely.
Yeah. Cool. Well, now you've actually mentioned a company from a startup from Aarhus that you've collaborated with, and that brings my attention to what I'd like to have your view on in regards to the local ecosystem in, let's say, Aarhus, central region, Denmark, and maybe even Denmark in total. What do you see as strengths and weaknesses being an impact startup as you guys? What do you see in the ecosystem that we have going for us, and where we could have something else being built up to support you?
First of all, I'm very lucky to be based in Aarhus. There's a lot of attention from the municipality of Aarhus helping us in this, and support regarding that we are small. We have a scale-up potential, but I would say if we didn't get the support from the municipality, we're not able to vision a new factory at the port of Aarhus. So I feel this is very important, and we should definitely continue supporting even smaller companies like that locally. And we can, of course, be better. We should always keep focusing on getting better doing this. In the beginning, we were not able to attract capital locally, not in the scale that we needed. I took part in scale-up programs, startup programs across the world, I would say, and I've met a lot of scale-ups from nearly every country, and that gives you some idea of where are we in Denmark compared to the rest of the world. And I would say if we should look somewhere to get inspired, we should look to the Netherlands. Amsterdam is a huge ecosystem for the impact area, and we should learn from them. I mean, I could go to Amsterdam and harvest soft money in a scale of 200,000 euros. I can't do that in Denmark, not even now. That's the kind of thing that we should try to promote and build in Denmark, and we should look definitely to the people who are a little ahead of us, because we are capable of being in the forefront, but we're not the forefront at the moment.
Personally, I have the feeling that the ecosystem around impact startups in Aarhus is also a little bit fragmented. I mean, it's hard to figure out where to go and who's out there and who can you connect with. That's 2 steps ahead of you. And is that the same feeling that you have, or are you starting to see some consolidation of the ecosystem in Aarhus?
Definitely, impact should come from all the industries, and that makes it very fragmented. You have it within food, packaging, and it's definitely more difficult for investors, especially investors used to the very narrow, but focused tech world. That you should have knowledge within algae production and reduction of carbon from energy in transportation. It will be fractioned, but if we have in mind that focus should be on harvesting carbon from atmosphere now and stop releasing it, then I believe this should be our mindset. I often tell people, start counting your carbon. I mean, if you burn 1 kg of gasoline in your car, you release 2.7 kg, roughly 3 kg of CO2. Start counting how is your own footprint. I mean, how about the steak you eat? We should have focus on that, and if we all start focusing on that, then we'll be able to solve the problem. But it will change the world, because then you have people in positions that in companies that then have a new mindset. Start counting your carbon.
Yeah, I mean, and the general focus on, I guess that's what you're hinting at here as well, to not just make it a subgenre of a business segment in the industry, the entire industry of Aarhus, but it's really something that needs to be a bigger part of us as humans walking around the city and thinking about how we act and what the causes are of the actions that we do. Making that a bigger part of the general agenda of the society in Aarhus is something I know the municipality is also trying to drive through different initiatives. So I hope we're going to see much more of that.
And there's a lot of good ideas and work going on regarding getting into the right direction at the moment. And we count in Aarhus already. I mean, but we should facilitate the counting, I would say.
So if I could grant you one wish. Go ahead.
Yeah, one wish. Why don't we erect a pole at the harbor side next to Navitas, showing how far are we? How much did we cut carbon in Aarhus? For everyone to follow and get inspired, and let's do some new stuff.
Before the sea level rises and takes over that pole.
Yeah. Maybe I could follow.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, cool, Thomas. So I think one thing that I'd like to zoom in on when it comes to the startup ecosystem as well is the funding situation, and you've been fortunate to get some funding on board. You mentioned challenges that you've had with raising soft funding in the process as well. Can you take us through some of the challenges that you felt as an impact startup in raising funding to grow your company?
We are small. We know that. Danish people, it's a small country. Of course, it's far easier to attract capital if you're American. I was in a program with some guys who had an idea how to mimic what a spider makes, the thread that a spider makes. They were able to attract capital in the range of 4 million. 4 billion Danish, and based on a very small company and only an idea. And I'm actually in the market. I have a product already, but I need to move to US to be on the radar for those investors. We don't have that kind of scale in Denmark. We have some. We got some grants. It took a while for us to get granted by the Danish government. We actually did not yet succeed making one of the big Horizon 2020 grants from EU. I've been pitching 3 times now. We didn't succeed yet, and actually we have products out there that are now carbon products, carbon releasing products. It's a tough journey to be on.
So it sounds from your point of view, it's both the early cash, the smaller grants, but also the
soft big money in the beginning, yes,
and then the big rounds that can really push you out into the stratosphere. That's the 2 big holes.
There's not a sufficient ecosystem for supporting startups like us yet, but I know there's a lot of good work going on regarding this, but it's not an easy task. We should definitely try to help even the very small startups that has eco or carbon potential, carbon reducing potential. Support them simply and that's the bottom lines that we see a lot of people focusing on the monetary bottom line. The carbon dioxide bottom line is more important now, and it is for companies because their customers want to reduce the carbon. So it's important to have a new balance between the monetary bottom line and the carbon bottom line.
What is your best advice for future founders that are a little bit earlier than you are right now when it comes to raising funding for bold visions like the one that you pitched when you managed to close funding?
Don't give up.
Don't give up.
It takes a lot of stamina. I mean, it's working like 3 times normal people, and but if you have the stamina, then there might be a reward in the end. At least you're conscious and I feel good getting up in the morning. I believe I do good stuff.
Well, I think most of us, or at least everyone that I know, can agree that you guys are doing that, and we're really proud to have a company like Pond with the vision that you have in Aarhus. Brings me to my last. It's
important, Lasse, for me to inspire people to have this kind of feeling that we don't close your eyes, don't believe that someone else will make this happen. Let's inspire people to just jump in there because you feel lucky if you. Is in it for a good cause, or you feel blessed.
So there's also on a personal level, as I hear it from you, not just the one bottom line about building this big company and potential exit and whatever. I don't know, that's probably even not part of your strategy, but it's really about making that big change that you guys are on the path to create with Pond.
It's not cool reaching for a Lamborghini anymore. It's cool feeling blessed to contribute to our change of the environment.
So you already told us a little bit about the near future plans for Pond, building up the next step down by the harbor. But what are the future plans for you guys? Where's Pond going in the future? If you could dream big dreams, but I know you can.
Yeah, I do still, even though there's a lot of struggle. We are definitely soon going to scale up big by volume, and this will create a lot of jobs too, and export for Denmark. At least when I look into what's in our calendar with major companies, this at least has a potential to be very big, and I believe we'll soon see it grow. I personally have ambitions to retreat a little from the daily business and look further into the supply chain of what we need. We need to start looking into growing algae, macroalgae, seaweed. Actually, I have a project that I'll soon reveal. Maybe we'll start growing seaweed if we get the permission for it just outside here.
Nice.
And then we'll harvest it and turn it into an alternative for plastic in the factory in here. Just as a pilot, of course, but seaweed is big. We 1/3 of the surface of the planet is sea deserts, meaning that there's actually no life out there. We can start growing seaweed in the open oceans, and they will attract animals, meaning that biodiversity will grow. We will suck out simply vacuum the atmosphere for very fast for carbon dioxide. And we will even store, due to the biological organic matter that gets off these seaweed farms. They will settle as sediment in the oceans, and then we'll store actually carbon by that. These are some of the visions that we will soon go into. And in that ballway, we are actually in a collaboration with a nearby a huge project in Grenaa where we will turn biomatter into future products. Yes.
Nice.
So those are some of the visions that I see.
And I think it's because of those visions that I know that in a few years, when I'm going to introduce where I'm from, I can say two things. I can say I'm from Aarhus. I can say I'm from the city where Pond was founded, because the things that you guys have going for you is really, really incredible, and it makes me feel proud to be from that city where you guys were founded as well. So thank you very much for joining us here today, and good luck on all the future endeavors. And I hope that you guys can be part of everyone in the ecosystem's narrative of how to really set the bold ambition and go for it.
Thank you very much, Lasse, and to all of you out there, let's do it. We can do it, but let's do it fast. We need to speed up.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Thomas. Next one up is Paul Miller. He is one of the impact investors that you want to know in Europe. Paul is the managing partner and the CEO of Bethnal Green Ventures, and we're going to talk about how, as a startup, you can prepare for early stage investments. So Paul, can you give a brief introduction of yourself?
Well, hello everybody. My name's Paul, and I help run Bethnal Green Ventures, based out of London. And we're an early stage investor in what we call tech for good businesses. So that's businesses that are trying to achieve a sustainable planet, healthier lives, or a better society. We've been investing since 2012. So we've now invested in over 130 companies. And we love working with really early stage businesses. So typically when they're at a sort of 2 or 3 people, a prototype of a product that we can have a look at and sort of see, is the potential there for that to have a massive positive impact on the world, and to improve the lives of millions of people, but also to be a high growth, profitable business in the same way as any tech startup should be. So we're very much a straightforward venture capital firm in terms of our expectations of returns. We want to achieve market leading returns. We don't think there's any compromise in terms of backing businesses that have a positive social or environmental impact as well. We think that we think of it as more like a Venn diagram rather than a spectrum. So it's not like you have impact at one end and profit at the other. We think there are, there's two circles, one circle of businesses that are highly profitable and a circle of businesses that are impactful. And we're looking for the ones that are in the middle, the ones that are in the overlap, where they're both really highly profitable, but also have a positive impact. And I think, BGV we're in a very lucky position in that we're seeing huge growth in terms of the numbers of founders who want to start this sort of business, but we're also seeing growth in the number of investors and sort of capital allocators, asset managers who want to see those kind of businesses be supported and invest in them. So as BGV, we've been lucky to ride the wave of growth in both mission-led entrepreneurs, but also in the growth of impact investment. I'm very positive about the future of tech for good investing and impact investing.
Thank you for the introduction, Paul. Can you put some words on the geographical spread in terms of when you're looking for investment opportunities?
So we're based. Bethnal Green is a district of East London. It's where we started, and I think some people think that means we only invest in companies from Bethnal Green, but that's just not true. We are predominantly a UK investor, so most of the companies we back are based in the UK, although we have a number of investments in other European countries. Actually, none in Denmark at the moment, but not ruling it out. I think we see Europe as being a real, to be honest, the sort of global leader in tech for good businesses. I think there's a bit of difference in the US. I think there's in the US there's still more of a idea that you make a lot of money and then you do good, rather than you make a lot of money through doing good, if you see what I mean. So we've tended to find that the UK, Europe has been ahead of the curve in terms of this way of thinking about startups and this way of thinking about investment, and certainly. I think everywhere is catching up. We're seeing more and more investment funds and more startups in Asia, in Africa, and in the US as well. But actually, I think Europe is still slightly ahead, particularly attitude-wise about this, if not necessarily in terms of the total amount of capital available.
So what are your future predictions? What should we be looking into, and what are interesting trends within this impact area?
It's starting to get easier for impact startups to raise money, but that's from a very low base. It was pretty hard, when we started out in 2012. There really wasn't such a thing as impact investment, certainly not sort of tech for good startups. But over the last couple of years, I think it's really improved, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that actually sort of investors are getting a bit of pressure now to put their money to work, to have a positive impact. There's your reputation as an investor matters in a way that it didn't used to, because it's getting more competitive as more money comes into private markets, as people tend to call it, or alternative investments. And sustainability impact is one of the ways that firms need to show their investors that they're doing good things with their money, and there's no risk of like it backfiring reputation wise on them. So there's that side of things. I think that's very positive. What's still not quite right is the amount of money that's available at different stages and the kinds of support that's available at different stages for impact startups. So I still think it's really hard at kind of pre-seed and sort of seed level. There's still a shortage of funds and supports for tech for good businesses there. It's still nowhere near as rich as it should be. There's more capital later on once you've got a proven model and you can sort of you can show that capital for scaling. I think that's more available now in Europe certainly than it was a few years ago. But I think still at the pre-seed stage, it's still if you're a great startup, you will raise money. Don't get me wrong, but it's still not quite right at that pre-seed stage, and we need to work on that and get more support for startups at that stage that fits their needs, because I think there are things that are slightly different about impact startups compared to sort of legacy startups, let's call them that. But because I think all startups should be impact startups in the end. But I think it's still harder at that stage for an impact startup.
So, Paul, I imagine that you've seen a lot of cases. What would your advice be for startups when you're talking about raising capital at a very early stage, if they want to do a very solid preparation for this?
So I think you're competing with mainstream startups. So you should be just as good as any other startup on product, on how you sell your team, what the financial opportunity you're going after is. And you need to compete on that level. But what you also need to do, and this is where it starts to get interesting and good, is you need to be able to demonstrate your potential for impact in a way that's compelling, and in a way that basically makes you a better investment than a non-impact startup, because you're that mainstream startup and you're something else. You're something beyond that. So it's not an either or. Again, it's you're the mainstream startup, but then you've got this extra. And I think the way to pitch your impact is as a differentiator, but also as what some people would call a moat. So it's something that protects your business as it grows. So the fact that you're mission orientated, that you're going after something, means you can sell that as actually you're going to find it much easier to hire great people because they want to come in behind the mission. You're going to find it much easier to sort of push away the competition because you've got this mission and you're completely aligned on that. And they're going to find that very hard to copy a mission. They can copy your technology, but they can't copy your mission and your authentic approach to that. So I think that's the way I would always sort of say to startups to pitch themselves to investors, is to sort of think about what else is that investor seeing? Are they all these sort of mainstream startups, whether it's fintech or ad tech or whatever it is, and be as good as those, but then just be really strong on why your impact means that you're way better than that. You're actually you've got this real differentiation that's positive in terms of you as a business being successful in the end.
That sounds like a really good advice for them, but maybe it's easier than just said. So you've seen a lot of cases during the years. Where do they tend to fail, these startups?
Well, there's two biggest reasons that our startups or startups we've been involved in have failed. The first is not managing to get a business model that works fast enough. So not managing to be able to demonstrate to investors or to anybody else that there is a customer that's willing to pay for this in a repeatable way. I think you definitely get businesses where they manage to do a pilot, but then it doesn't repeat, and that's quite a common thing, I would say. And the only way to get around that is to try lots of things. It's the lean startup approach to try and work with your potential customers to understand their needs and build a product that they're willing to pay for, and that their competitors are willing to pay for as well. So that's the biggest cause of failure, I think, amongst startups, is that it's just, but that's hard. That's the same for any startup. The second most common reason is that the team blows up. So the team find that that they can't work together or whatever it might be, and I think we put a lot of emphasis on trying to help teams understand each other and really develop a strong team culture from the very beginning, where everybody understands what each other brings, and you have really clear communication and really clear roles and all those kinds of things. So we put a lot of emphasis on trying to really build strong team cultures in startup founding teams, because actually, if you don't, there's pretty good evidence that that's a reason why you might fail.
Yeah, so I think we can all agree on that a strong team is quite important. What we've seen in Denmark is that there's a lot of focus on how to quantify your impact. So actually being able to measure all the good things that you're doing. Do you see any ways of doing this in particular ways? Have you experienced with specific models that are good to use?
I think that the model or the way of thinking about it that we've seen emerge probably strongest is a thing called the Impact Management Project, or the IMP. And that's an approach that investors can take to measuring and managing impact. And it's very good. It's actually very straightforward. It's not rocket science, if we're honest. But it's that I think has become the predominant way of investors thinking about impact. And so, because we're such early stage investors, what we do is try and help our startups prepare for that. So to help them get on the track of measuring and sort of having KPIs that we know will be useful to later stage investors who might be looking for that kind of impact. Our sort of way of thinking about it is that the easiest way to have and measure an impact is to link it to your business model. So to try and build it into the way that you measure your impact is such that the more of the product or service you sell, the more positive impact you have. So then your impact metrics become really useful business metrics as well. And if you can do that, that's favorite. That's a really, really good way of doing things. I think, the other thing is that investors are getting a bit more savvy now about having an appropriate level of impact measurement for the stage of the startup. And this used to be a real problem, because it used to be that even if you were sort of a pre-seed startup, you'd have investors who expected you to have data like a sort of public company, and it was crazy. But actually now you're seeing that investors are more taking on. They say, okay, well, you're at that stage, so the standard of evidence I expect about your impact is maybe slightly easier than when you're at Series A or Series B or whatever it is. So I think investors are getting more sophisticated as well, which is good. But I think that's really important. As a startup, you need to say, okay, well, at the moment, we've just got a theory of change. Let's say we know how we want to have an impact. And you should just be honest about that. You just say, look, we're at this stage. This is what we're doing. But in the future, we're going to ratchet that up over time, and we're going to get better and better at measuring our impact. And I think that approach is now that's acceptable by both investors, but it's also practical for startups. And I think that's the way that things should be going.
Can you tell a bit about the industries that you're very focused at? Where are the exciting cases from your point of view at the moment?
So over the last couple of years, we've seen real growth and real innovation, I guess, in healthcare. So actually, the current crisis has really brought home that healthcare was, it was lacking a lot of technology that would have made this crisis easier to deal with. And so we've seen the uptake of technology in the National Health Service in the UK really go up over the last 12 months. And that's been really interesting. So we've had a lot of real success with healthcare startups over the last 12 months and longer. And I expect that to continue. I think it's just this crisis has shown that we need much better systems in healthcare to try and just organize things. So there's one of our startups, for example, called Doctor, who do smart appointment systems for healthcare, and they've been really involved in the scheduling of all the vaccinations in the UK over the last few weeks. And that's a real impact. Being able to actually help get the vaccinations out has been really important. And then the other area is climate, and that's more about choosing what industry do you want to have an impact on around climate. Obviously, energy is a really important one. We've seen a lot of really interesting startups that are trying to create better energy infrastructure in terms of software that's able to sort of adapt to a renewable world. That's really important. But then likewise in the food system, actually looking at climate from the point of view of how do you reduce wastage or improve transportation in the food system, those kind of issues I think are really interesting. And also air pollution, actually not just what's the source of the energy, but also what's the air pollution associated with different activities. And we think that's a really interesting area, and we're seeing quite a lot of growth in that. The other area, I guess, is in sort of more in the better society area for us, is around changes that are going on in the world of work, particularly around the gig economy or precarious work, and tools and services that help people to have better conditions, but also better opportunities in what's sometimes in some ways is the negative impact of technology has been the growth of the gig economy and the conditions in that. Now we're using technology to try and improve that, and try and make it better again. So that's another area that we think is really interesting.
It sounds like there's a lot of exciting industries to look into if you're on the hunt for good cases. I know there's a lot of angels listening in today, being wiser about how to do the right impact investment. Can you give an advice for those?
Yeah, I think I'd say for angel investors, it's really exciting. Don't get me wrong. Like there's all kinds of startups that you can invest in, and we quite often get people coming to us sort of saying, like, this is way more interesting than the stock market, for example, in terms of just like the kinds of companies that you can back as an early stage startup are just way more exciting, I think, in terms of impact than any publicly listed company at the moment. But these are the companies that will be the publicly listed companies in 10 years' time, and I think that's exciting. It's basically you can be working with companies now that will be big companies in 10 to 15 years' time, and that's essentially the joy of early stage investing is having a role in shaping those companies so as they do become brilliant companies in the future. I think for angel investors, though, you have to be willing to lose all your money. That's the ultimate. It is risky. Most of these companies don't work, and that's through no necessarily fault of the founders or of the system. It's just that this is risky business. It is difficult starting businesses that are going to be big, profitable, sustainable in their own right. So I think the only way as an angel to do that is either to work alongside a fund and like associate yourself with people who maybe know a bit more about or got a bit more experience of it, or to just really try and diversify yourself. So to make sure that you're actually investing in a whole portfolio of startups, because I think unfortunately the chances are if you just back a few, the chances are that probably none of them will work out. You need to be backing quite a large number to have the chance that one of them will really work out.
Okay. We know that a lot of startups actually rely on public collaboration in order to succeed and in order to test their product and access the market. I would like your perspective on how it is in London. Are they open for collaboration in the respective industries?
Yeah, so I think across the tech for good sector and impact startups, there is a bit of a different split compared to mainstream startups in terms of their business models. So certainly in our portfolio, about a third are consumer facing, about a third are business to business, if you like, and about a third actually the public sector or the government is the client. And that's unusual for tech startups. And that does mean that you do have to have a slightly different skill set in the team, I think, particularly if you're trying to do those kind of public sector partnerships. In the UK, the biggest one is the health service, that is the NHS. That used to have a reputation for being terrible. It was really hard as a startup to work with the NHS, but it's got a lot better in the last 5 years. And I think likewise with large companies, again, it tended to have a pretty bad reputation because you, as an impact startup, you probably get sent towards the CSR department. And let's be honest, they didn't have much money or necessarily much clout across the whole company. But what we've seen recently is that that's changed. And actually now our startups, they don't get the partnership through the CSR department. They get the partnership through strategy, through actual core company priorities, and that makes a real difference. So I think for startups, it's making sure that you're connecting into the core of the company if you want a partnership with that company, rather than you're just being sort of sidled off to the CSR department, because that tends to be a bit of a dead end.
Okay, so to avoid the dead end for the startups, I would like to give the last word to you, Paul. Do you have any final advice for startups sitting out there listening in today who really wants to succeed with their impact startup?
Thanks for having me. And I think it's a really exciting time for impact startups because, we're on the cusp of these really big trends in terms of both capital coming into the sector, which is growing very, very quickly. And even if it feels like it's hard to get at the moment, it is getting easier over time. But also in terms of what both customers and employees and people want to do with their money and their time. And so I think, that combination of those factors, the money coming in, plus the desire of customers and consumers and employees and people who want to support these businesses, they're both growing. And that means that this is a really exciting place to be.
So thanks to Paul for contributing with how to prepare for early stage investment. I'll hand it back to Lasse, who will facilitate the next panel discussion with WasteHero, Each Thing, and Ento Labs.
All right, so we're now ready for the next session. This is a panel discussion where we'll dive into a couple of different topics about how it is to grow an impact company. Together with me here today, I have 3 entrepreneurs, and I've actually asked them to introduce themselves and their company a little bit. I now saw that Katja and Hussam muted, so Henrik, that leaves you back on the table here. Will you introduce yourself?
Of course, yeah. Hi everyone, I'm Henrik Brink. I'm the co-founder, CEO of Ento Labs. So at Ento Labs, we're using new technologies and developments in AI and also in kind of smart meter infrastructure to make kind of energy and climate optimization of buildings much more easy and scalable. So today, those kinds of projects are very time-consuming and expensive. So usually it involves installing expensive equipment or hiring expensive energy consultants and doing manual labor. So we're trying to make it much more cost-effective and scalable, as I said. So it's actually really bad that today it's as hard as it is, because global emissions. You estimate actually that 40% of those are coming from buildings and the built environment. So what we're doing is starting in Denmark, working with retail chains and public buildings, and trying to cover as many buildings as we can just with software on the smart meter infrastructure that is already there. So today we're actually covering almost 400 million kilowatt hours, corresponding to about 1% of the emissions of Denmark, or the power consumption, across kind of thousands of buildings. And so we're building up kind of this database, and that in turn also makes the results better for new customers and existing buildings.
Okay.
So the vision, the grand vision is, of course, to be able to scale this outside of Denmark as well. And in our minds, there shouldn't be really a building that is not optimized and analyzed at a kind of continuous fashion for these optimizations.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. So personally, I have a background in kind of AI, machine learning in academia, and done kind of a startup previously in Silicon Valley that we sold to GE after 4 years. So after moving back here, I tried to kind of figure out what to use some of those experiences in, and I also think kind of when we get into this a little bit later, but this environment that is in this area also kind of enables working in the energy sector, and so there's been a lot of very interesting work done there, and so yeah.
Great. Looking forward to pick your brains with that experience in some of the later questions. I'll turn the mic now to Katja. Will you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Katja Meyer. I'm the co-founder of Each Thing, and at Each Thing, we're helping consumers find products that matches their needs and values, and amongst other things, sustainability, which can mean a lot of different things. It can mean CO2, it can mean no palm oil, it can mean plant-based. So just trying to tackle the complexity of of what is sustainability in a product choice. We're doing that by both mapping what are the values that the consumers are trying to live by, but also what are the different product attributes, and then map them together. That means we also have a really interesting data set on what are the missing products in the market today, and how are these trends developing. And we're using machine learning to develop insights into this consumer and market insights within sustainable product innovation. We're based in Aarhus in the Navitas with all these other guys as well. And we just launched our first app, so you can download that in the App Store today.
All right, congratulations. Really cool.
Thank you.
All right. So keeping the Navitas spirit high, I see you're the only one, Hussam, that's there at the office. Can you please introduce yourself and WasteHero?
Of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Hussam, and I'm the CEO and co-founder at WasteHero. So our story started almost 4 years ago when I was sitting in engineering class and looking outside of the window. I could see this one trash bin that was always emptied when it was empty or half full. And I knew it annoyed me so much that I had to develop the sensor that should sit inside of the trash bin and measure how full it is. And then later on, based on the data, we started seeing that 9 out of 10 trash bins was being emptied too early or too late. If it's too early, it's going to be exactly the same when I was looking outside of the window. You're going to have fleets coming, driving empty bins, wasting fuel, man hours, polluting CO2, and creating unnecessary traffic. And if it's going to be too late, the bin is going to be overflowing. You're going to have trash on the streets. Doesn't matter if you're in San Francisco or Singapore, it's going to smell. You're going to have citizen complaints, and even extra cost. The driver will have to go out and spend time emptying it. And very interestingly, in the city of Herning, where we first deployed in glass containers, you had a driver that was 50, 60 years old. And in wintertime, you had slippery roads, and you had the driver go out and he had to clean the bottles, and he could fall and break his back. So we even see societal problems in what we do. So really the solution is to understand the fill level of the trash bin and use that data to dispatch the fleets or the trash vehicles to come and pick up the bins at the right time. And by doing so, save cities or businesses money, but also decrease the CO2 emissions from the trucks.
Great, cool. So I'm really happy that you guys joined us here today, because one of the topics that I wanted to discuss with you is how we, as an ecosystem in Aarhus or in central region Denmark, actually create the right foundation for you guys to grow your company. So the first relatively open question is, what do you see of strengths and weaknesses in our ecosystem when it comes to helping impact companies like yourselves the way the ecosystem is today? Katja, do you want to tip in on that?
Sure. I think it like there's a really important question that kind of comes before your question, and that is how do we define an impact startup, and
yeah,
what do impact startups even have in common? Because I think just from this presentation you can see that we have very different fields of businesses, we have very different fields of very different customers, and we're using different technology. So we can't really connect around that. So I think it's worthwhile asking whether or not there's something that kind of connects impact startups on a higher level than just the mission, and whether it does make sense to talk about impact startups as a group that necessarily has shared interests. I'm not sure we actually can do that.
I think that's a very, very relevant question to ask, and you're hijacking my agenda, because it's something that I would like to get back to later on. But maybe we should actually put it in right here. I see that as a kind of a to some extent a strength that we're trying to build a brand around you guys who has multiple bottom lines in what you do. But I've also met that opinion other places, that to be put into this maybe too narrow brand is challenging when you want to build a startup. I don't know if you, Henrik, if you have an additional.
Yeah, I think definitely, you're not going to build a business if it's not a good business in general. So of course you need to also also be good financially and in other ways. But I think you can use some of the goals that you have and like the vision for the company to, attract early customers and, employees, of course, and investors if that's necessary. So that you use it kind of as a getting started point, and then of course you need to build a sustainable financially business as well. But I think and that's something that I think we should look at in the area is, are we facilitating that there is places to meet for people that want to be first movers on these things, and do the big companies have the people that are willing to do that, or are they only thinking about next year's budget and things like that?
Yeah, that's true. Maybe if we bring it up to a very high level of definition here, one of the things that, at least in my mind, kind of makes you guys the Avengers of startup, that binds you together, is that you're trying to make a change. And I think that's one of the things that we're seeing the municipality partnering companies in the area trying to look for as well. Hussam, I don't know if you can weigh in on this, that this searching for more than just being a startup creating monetary value, but also having this extra vision with what you want to achieve, if that's been something that's been helpful for you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I see WasteHero contributing to identifying ourselves as an impact is we, like a very tangible thing is we have the 70% or whatever climate reduction ambitions and goals. Mm-hmm. And when we look into our vertical, we see that the existing solutions are not contributing just as much as we would be with our solution. And being able to help cities, because what happens? I mean, we have the goal from politically, and then the mayor in the city says, "Well, we need to do something about it." And then the technical in the technical waste department comes to WasteHero and say, "How can we meet this goals?" Right? That's how it happens. So then in the public tenders, it reflects that this solution should also be able to meet some of these goals, and then obviously we thrive as a startup, as a technology provider, because previous solutions won't be able to do it with their methods. So that's, I think, a tangible way of viewing it from our side.
I saw on your website, Hussam, that you've also mentioned a couple of these. I guess it's a way to kind of reduce the complexity in understanding the space. Some of the UN World Goals, that there are some of them that you're targeted, or that you're trying to tip into. Can you? Has that been helpful to have this as a kind of a complexity reduction to say this is a common language around what we want to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we have a little funny story about that, because we sat together and rebranded our company WasteHero 2.5 years ago. And one way we did it was looking at these development goals, and one person suggested, but we solved 5 or 4. But we ended up committing to 1, sustainable cities, which is number 11, and that brings some sort of mission inside and from the outside to the company that you can commit to. And I think it's very healthy for all impact startups to have a good look at these goals. Yeah. And reflect on where they contribute, not only because it brings a mission internally, but also because it has been set politically that we need to search these goals. And that means that, for instance, funds and so on will be working towards meeting some of these goals. So it's also a good to know how and you solve these goals, because then you can actually also attract funding doing that.
Do you know your goal, Henrik?
For sure. We're most on goal number 7, which is sustainable energy. But it's a little bit tricky where you fit in wells. But I totally agree. You need to kind of focus on one, or not too many at least, so it doesn't become SGG bingo and kind of waters out the meaning of it.
Yeah, true. Did you have a comment, Hussam?
Yeah, just a real quick one. Also, why it's really important is because we also see corporates define these goals for themselves, and it's a great way to match up with startups. I know Grundfos, the clean water, right? And if you put yourself in that, it's easier for them to find you, and vice versa.
True. when you watch the handball games right now, they're not talking about their pumps. They're talking about the 2 goals they want to solve. So I think some level of complexity reduction. How about you, Katja? Do you have your goals imprinted in the mind?
Yes, obviously we are the very interesting color brown, number 12, sustainable production and consumption.
Gotcha.
So what's actually really interesting when working with these producers and also labeling and certifications is that we get to work with all of them without owning it into our company. So our company is very much aligned with number 12, but for example, we're working with MSC and ASC labels that are sustainable fish and that's the way we get to include the sustainable development goals and align with the producers on different topics through the SDGs as well.
Right. So another question that I wanted to ask you guys is that if we look out and around the world, you guys have, I know, Katja, you've been in the Israeli community, and Henrik, you have some experience from the US, and some you have investors from over there. Anything we can learn here locally that you've seen from around the ecosystems that you've met that we need to put into the equation in our community locally to make it better for startups like you guys? Katja, maybe you can start.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was really fortunate to go to Israel, to Tel Aviv with the Innovation Center Denmark. Not last year, of course, due to travel restrictions, but the year before that. And while Tel Aviv and Israel is such a thriving hub for startups and especially tech startups, they don't have the same mindset in regards to sustainability as the Danish ecosystem has. So I think in that way it was a huge eye-opener that here's something that's sort of built into our culture that we can capitalize on because this is the new hot thing. So in terms of being an impact startup, I do think that Denmark is a really great place to be. They do other stuff really well, sort of capitalize on research, so what we call spin-offs in Denmark that comes out of the university. They also have this really amazing way of connecting investors and corporate to the startups in a way where they are extremely willing to take some chances and invest both time and money in helping these startups get off the ground. So there's both good things and bad things I think we can learn from the Israeli ecosystem.
And how about you, Henrik, with your experience from the States? Anything that you're missing except the sun, I assume, in a while? The nice strolls through the streets of San Francisco and so on. But
yeah, this time of year, it's definitely hurting a little bit. But no, it's okay. I mean, in general, we're seeing a trend where employees can be anywhere and we can do business anywhere. So obviously, those kinds of things are kind of becoming smaller, but there's definitely kind of cultural differences, and I think Katja is right that we should definitely focus on some of the things that we're good at, which is definitely in this whole impact area. But so if we can then kind of take some of the other things and bring it back here, then we could do something really good there and actually become that hub, right? And I think some of those things should be, I think, as you also mentioned, like the willingness to take risks, from a customer perspective. Like if you're a big corporate or if you're a public institution, then just try that startup out and maybe de-risk in some other way so that it stops after 3 months or whatever. But just try it out, and that really helps the startup get good references or at least learn something. And then, I mean, that's from the customer side, and from the investor side, what you're really seeing in those environments are, people, coming from some of the other startups, earning some good money or sales or whatever it is, and putting that back into the ecosystem, and so you get this kind of this effect of feedback from successful entrepreneurs, and we're starting to see that a little bit more, but it's definitely something that we could learn a little bit more from.
True. Now, Hussam, you guys closed a round recently from US-based investors. So it's kind of the opposite way around. They look to us for things to learn, or to you for things to learn. Do you have something to weigh in on this? What you've learned from getting in collaboration with an ecosystem outside of here?
Yeah, sure. I can add a little bit, but obviously I haven't as much experience with San Francisco and US as Henrik has. But I can try to wade in my takes. I think what we really can learn. I think if you work in impact, you can be very fortunate to actually be able to make a real difference in the world. Often you do work with business critical processes or infrastructures, like if the trash is not picked up, everyone here would be pretty pissed off. So, but I think what you can really take, I can probably add a little bit and then add to Henrik's comment. I think what I learned from the US is it's really important that you try to solve hard, big, real world problems and really be bold about it. But also again focus at what you're good at here in Denmark, as Henrik says, and look at Denmark as an advantage, as an ecosystem. We have a place where we can do something very small, very quickly, but also have that born global mentality and look at like the big market and think, how can I scale this and make it really big? I think instead of just thinking I want to do this and I only want to stay locally, I think we have a lot of. I think the reason why WasteHero maybe could attract funding to Denmark is also because we are on the top of the UN's list on waste tech. So having that in mind and being able to argue for why the investment, the startup that will redefine the category of waste management comes out of Denmark. So something like that, I would say.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we sometimes almost jokingly say, if we can do a big difference here, like for our customers here, and this, our topic's actually been the focus for like 3 decades. Imagine what we can do outside of Denmark, right?
True. A topic that I really wanted to talk to you guys about as well is partnerships. I think that's one of the how to speak or how to say it. It's like a huge advantage that we have, where we haven't really fulfilled the potential yet, especially if we look at the central region of Denmark locally. Partnerships between you guys as the up-and-coming innovative companies and the corporates that we have in the local area. Now, I know you guys are in different ways involved with bigger companies in developing your company. So I'd like to hear a little bit about how you think that's something we could leverage even more, and your experience in working with the corporates and developing your products. Henrik, I don't know if you want to go first on this one.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, partnerships are very interesting. Like they give a potential huge, it's a huge leverage potentially, but it's also a little bit of a danger for startups, I think. So I think that may come into this whole notion of educating corporates as well in how they should work with startups, because you tend to see, at least if it's a company that is not used to working with startups, that they may, and it's probably not on purpose, but they kind of want to have things internally. They want to make sure that they are in control. And again, this whole notion of not taking any risks. So that kind of means that startups will have to kind of sell themselves, not necessarily in a fully, but otherwise to sell their products into the partners so they can sell it. And for a startup, then you kind of risk losing, contact with the customer. And in the early phases of a startup, that really is important, right? You need to understand how to build your product and how to actually serve the customers that you're going to serve. Yeah. And that is a risk of losing that. So I think you, as a startup, you need to be aware of that. And as a corporate, you need to make sure that you kind of give space and maybe even be like, so we are actually developing this relationship. This is the startup that is doing it. And we're proud of the collaboration, and they're handling this stuff, right? So it's kind of, you also, I think it gets back to the risk awareness on that.
Hussam, you've done it actively with WasteHero, not with corporates, but with the municipality and public sector. How has that journey been? I mean, they've been pretty instrumental, I guess, to some point, but I assume that there's also been some level of frustration with tempo and all that stuff in that process.
Yeah, I needed a lot of anger management in that process.
Can you take us through some of you depend quite a lot on your public partners here. Anything that could be done to grease up that process a little bit and make it more smooth as a startup to approach municipalities?
I don't think we have cracked that at all, Lasse.
Okay.
But I can say that I can. So WasteHero is in almost 30 countries today. I just want to say that, and we work with really, really large distributors to get into cities today. And that's probably the most successful way that we have experienced so far. So yeah, partner up with large corporations if you want to go through public tenders. But I think one thing I would say is that in Denmark, just real quick, we did bid on a tender on a municipality in Denmark a while back, but you had to have economic viability to bid on that tender, so it wasn't startup friendly. So almost instantly you're eliminated unless you have a partner that can. If you can do something on that to make Tinder startup friendly, SME friendly, that would be a really big step. If that's not a possibility, then at least create an ecosystem where startups can quickly and swiftly partner up with corporations that are also interested in leveraging not only startup technology on the POC, but also going to cities with them.
Okay. And how about you, Katja? So you deal a lot with data and some of the data that these companies maybe would want to hold on to, but how's your experience been with this?
Yeah, so we do have a lot of partners and a lot of different types of partners, especially because I think specifically within the impact field, if you do want to make an impact, you can't do it alone. So having partners isn't just nice, it's a necessity to really get to where you need your company to go, to an even larger degree, I think, than regular startups, because we do need to collaborate to take these issues that we're each tackling into control. So for us, it's been refreshing to see that the corporates have actually acknowledged that transparency in supply chain isn't optional anymore. It's going to become a ticket to play, and they're looking into ways of getting there before it's too late to kind of be ahead of the curve on this one. And that's where we come in with some interesting solutions. But yeah, as you said, the tempo, I mean, we're ready to go, like whenever they say, we can do that next week or maybe 6 months or stuff like that. It's like, no, let's do it now. I had a case this fall where we did a podcast on how different foods that we put on the Christmas table are affecting climate, and what is being done to work with that as well. And then we had one meat producer tell us, we would love to participate in May, but this was a podcast for Christmas. And it's just a podcast. It's not even like a real partnership. So that's just, I mean, sometimes you get hit with this reality of how long does it actually take to get like these partnerships into gear. And I just think that the grit and proving that you still exist is just such a big part of being a startup, and especially in these times with COVID, right? That actually just surviving can be a good thing in itself. And thriving, of course, is really impressive. But yeah, I definitely think partnerships could be streamlined a little bit. I had a really weird realization last time I did a panel debate, and it was with a CSR manager of a corporate, and they said, but we're working with so many startups. We're working on an innovation project with the municipality within water. So it's like, but that's not the same. And I think it really speaks to what Hussam is saying, and also what Henrik's saying is about how are you mitigating those risks, because it is risky working with a startup. Yeah. You might not get the output that you want because it's new and it's new technology, but that's just a chance that you have to say, is that the strategy that we as a corporate want to employ, that we want to be ahead of the curve and working with those who have the newest knowledge, and we are able and willing to carry some of that risk as well.
Yeah, the newest knowledge and the good energy that's being added with the collaboration with startups as well. And while you then are waiting for the collaboration to go through, then there's many jobs as a founder of a company. One of them is making sure of the finances, all the financial part all the way through. So the last topic that I wanted to for us to spend some time on is the funding situation. We've seen lately that Vækstfonden and Innovationsfonden are in their mandate really pushing the impact agenda. And with the same challenges that we just talked about here, what does that actually mean? At least there's a lot of focus on the fact that they really want to leverage companies with multiple bottom lines. But I'd like to hear your experience in raising money for companies like the ones you have. Sam, you recently closed your round from outside of Denmark. And how has the entire funding thing been for you guys to work on?
Interesting.
Yeah,
it was interesting. I think
more anger management.
It's funny. Yeah, I think I just recommendation how it was. I think it was a learningful experience. I think fundraising is a skill that you have to learn, and we have, I think, had to go through that learning process, and then it succeeded. I guess at the end, but during that process, I think we've tried to fundraise for talk with different investors over 2 years, and we certainly did see that more impact funds appeared. So funds that are dedicated to startups that does an impact, and that is great to see. And it's more investors also more open for the long-term strategy of a company, if it also includes clean tech or impact as well.
Because I guess that's one of the major things, the long-term view on what we're developing. Katja, you actually got a hold of one of those impact funds. As far as I remember, they even have it in their name, right? Or what's the name of that?
Yeah, Greenwise Invest.
That's true.
Our impact investor. Yeah.
Can you tell a little bit about how? I mean, how it was? Did you have a lot of different offers to choose from, and chose them specifically because they had the impact view on things, or how's your process been fundraising?
So for us, because of the vision that we have in regards to impact, it was really important for us to find an investor who wanted to be on that journey, and that we felt like wouldn't push us towards something evil. I mean, we're always talking about evil investors, but obviously once you're starting to understand consumer data and you have some knowledge into what do people care about, that data can be exploited in different ways. And we really didn't want to put ourselves in a situation where we felt like that might be an option, specifically because all of the partners that we were working with were always asking, how are you funded? And what are the risks that this will become something that we don't want to be a part of? Yeah. So it was really, really important for us to find the right fit. I think it's sort of one of those, when you go into it, and especially if you haven't been in the startup environment for a long time, like I know most of us have, you think that being an impact startup will get you some easy points, but really it's just another box that somebody has to tick for you. So it's just more demands on what you're doing. You don't get off easy because you're an impact startup. You can come and say, we're not planning on making as much money that we could because we're an impact startup. You still have the 10x expectation to revenue. And I really don't think that you can look at investors and impact investors and say anything in general. I think like with everything else, they're completely different and they have different expectations and different experiences within investing. We're really happy with the ones that we got. Greenwise Invest, they have really shown to be a very compassionate investor who trusts this journey and is always pushing us to keep true to what is the impact that we want to create. And I think that's some of the things that you can look at if you're going to look for an impact investor. But I mean, they're also struggling to define what does it mean to be an impact investor, and what does it mean to be an impact startup, and what kind of companies can they actually invest in, because what is impact?
That's interesting. Kind of have the feeling that we're in the pioneering years of this, the early in lack of a better word. That's and how about you, Henrik? Do you have anything to weigh in on this topic?
I think I mean we've definitely got some advantage from the Innovationsfund focus, and so we've been fortunate to get some of those funds and kind of have us avoid some of the very early investments that we otherwise have to take. And otherwise, I think as Hussam and Katja says, like there's a lot of impact investors starting to pop up or starting to really and some of the other kind of more established companies have impact funds, or so I think they're definitely looking for startups, but as is also said, like those startups still need to be good businesses, and they still need to follow kind of the startup trajectory. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves, and if that kind of really helps drive it, or what the effect will be.
I think it's great that you guys are good examples of the fact that this is not just a charity game, that there's actually good businesses behind it. The last topic that I had was to talk about the term impact startups. Now we already did that. So I think I'm going to leave us all with a question. I want to have you guys give your or weigh in on this. What would, if you could wish for one thing that we would have in the city of Aarhus, or maybe even broader than that in Denmark, to leverage and help the ecosystem in our part of the world to create even better impact startups, what would it be? And I'll start with mine. Mine is to have a closer collaboration between startups and corporates here. I think that's a big way to go. And now I'm going to put some pressure on. Let's see who wants to go first. You're all muted now, so I'm just going to pick one. Hussam, what do you really wish for? If I was your genie and could make everything come true.
I think it would be it's a great question. I think it would be a culmination of something Henrik and Katja both said. I would take the word really inspired me, education, but not only of corporates but also of municipalities in Denmark, because that's actually something we can do, like as a government. And when I'm saying that, let's say for instance the sales cycles in municipalities are ridiculously long, and a startup is running on runway, you're going to die at some point if you don't get any money. So it doesn't make sense for you to spend 8 or 12 months to implement a solution, and then somebody is just sitting there and not considering that you're actually a startup and you're going to create wealth if you succeed and all of that. So that education is saying this is actually a startup, and if you want to engage, spend 3 months or something like that to certain innovation departments, whichever municipality it is. That could be quite. So, and the reason I'm saying that, again, we just raised money. And we spoke to hundreds of investors, and you can really feel if it's an investor that was a previous founder before, that respects your time, or it's somebody that just spends all your time just chatting and then drawing it out. And that's because they got the right education. I don't think anyone is doing that on purpose, but that is something that's super vital. I think that's my wish.
So I kind of feel like it's 2 wishes, but I'll give you the 2 wishes. So we're at partnerships, we're at speed, and then education. Then I'll turn it to you, Katja. What can we do for you?
I think it's like it's sort of in the same alley. I think agility is such a big part of it. So how do you navigate in a big corporation as a startup, and how, and it also connects to speed, right? And obviously as a startup you do have to fit into the world that already exists, but it would be really interesting to see if corporates could see some potential to kind of speed up and be more agile in working with the startups as well. And I think also a big opportunity could be paid pilots. So money, of course, is an important part of being a startup, and I think we've already touched a lot about it in terms of investments, which is a big part of being a startup, but obviously money that you made from real paying customers who's saying this service or this product is something that we are willing to pay money for and spend time on help co-developing. That's even more valuable. So if you could kind of facilitate those kind of collaborations, I think that would be really interesting. For startups and corporates alike.
Cool. And Henrik, last but not least.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you're saying. To say something different, I would say we have kind of a unique opportunity here to actually, as we talked about, take these impact kind of mentality and also become like a high-tech impact-focused hub to attract talent from outside of Denmark and investors and customers, right? So I think it's already the case that if you go out into the world with a Danish company, they have a certain view on you. It's a brand, and I think we can make that even stronger. And I think we should try to see, what are the things that we can do to actually make that come true. Like if you need to attract talent, you need to make sure that like when they come to Denmark or to Aarhus, for example, that there's meetup groups that they're used to from San Francisco or New York or whatever that covers the areas that you care about. There's industry, there's corporates, but we really have a kind of a unique point where we can try to build from, I think.
I strongly agree, and I think that's something we all need to take part in, and I actually feel quite certain that you guys will join that journey as well. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and your views on this topic, and Katja, also thank you for bringing up what is the impact term, and I think that's something we need to get back to once in a while and discuss how we can make that easier for the world to understand. And to divide it into the sub-genres that it also represents. Thank you very much, and enjoy your day.
Thanks, Lasse.
So a big thank you to all the speakers for today. This was the last session. To round the day off, I'll invite the CEO of Incuba, a very great partner of ours in building this Grow Impact initiative. So Meyer-Louise, I would like you to have the last word for today's session.
Hi everyone, my name is Meyer-Louise Eggerskov. I'm the CEO of Incuba. Incuba is a science park, a community and an accelerator, primarily for startups that are knowledge intensive and that work within IT, clean tech and healthcare. We offer you professional shared functions and facilities, but also a shortcut to the ecosystem where you can access the right collaboration partners, the right advice and knowledge, but also the investors that are eager to hear about your company and are eager to find new business cases that they can make money on, but also make the world a better place. I hope you've had a very nice day today meeting some of the most prominent startups that we have in our ecosystem at this time that work with impactful business models. And we're proud to say in Incuba that many of them actually are a part of our community today or have been previously on their journey. My advice for you is to early on engage in the ecosystem where many people are there for you and they offer free advice and they've talked to many startups like yourself and helped them find the right business model. And don't be afraid to early on share your ideas with potential customers and also potential investors because they want to meet you early on in order to also influence with their knowledge so they can help you find the right business model and how to target the challenges ahead. At Incuba, we also organize what we call Aarhus Investor Summit, which is an organization where we build relations between investors, offer them a way to share knowledge, but also make pitching events so that the startups can meet the investors. And one of the aims that we have for the future is to build this network to become even larger, also involving international investors, because we have so much to offer. In our ecosystem, we have very good cases within impact. So the future looks very bright. And speaking about investors, tomorrow that will be the theme for our conference. And you'll learn more about the ecosystem for impact investors, what they're looking for, and how you can target what they need. I hope you will tune in for tomorrow's conference. Thank you for today.